Live stream. Got it.
It says you say, it's funny because I always hesitate because it tells me it's still thinking.
Right.
When you say you already see it. This meeting is being live streamed,
Right.
in case you didn't know.
Yep.
All right. Pulling up my page, which of course I should have done before we got on. As always. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. So much fun. Okay, here we go. There we are. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evagnoni.
Bringing you this week's Ascended World. And it looks like on my phone that Facebook has made some more changes to their layout. So hopefully I see any comments.
Yeah, I think it looks the same to me, but I don't know. Guess we'll see.
We shall see. So if we don't reply in a timely manner, it's because we just don't see it.
Right. Right.
Anyway, so well, how did we get to this topic last week? Oh, I know what we were talking about.
We talked about a lot of distractions first.
Yeah. Well, distractions, and then there's so much riddled with be careful what you wish for, right?
Right.
And I think that's what led us into this conversation, because it's this, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want to create this, I want to create this. And then when we're presented with an opportunity to even crack that door, right, we tend to resist it. Like you were saying, you were, resisting it with your husband. And then it was like, and then on the inside, you're going, well, I asked for this. And why am I like just crawling because I want to pull back from it?
Right. Right. And then so willing to blame anything and everything but myself.
Yeah.
For why this isn't happening. Why this
well, and then when it's offered to you, then you want to deny it. Like, then you're like, oh no, nope. I'm going to put a wall up here. Right.
Right. Yeah. Cause I really need to have another obstacle. I need to have another obstacle because I'm not quite worthy for that, or I'm hesitant for some reason. And I think that's when we came up with that, being vulnerable.
Yeah. Because when you look at that, right, and often we'll say, and we'll complain and we'll claim victimhood to something and say, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this. But then we do things that look like self-sabotage, right? If we look closely,
right?
Although we'll still claim victimhood to it and say, oh, I can't do that because of this. Or then it's like all these parameters of control around it. Oh no, this can only happen if this, and this. And oh no, I'm going to add this parameter, and I'm going to add this one and this one. And you basically,
but I thought it would look like this, and I thought it would feel like this. So clearly something's off.
Right. And then we just throw up our hands and say, well, look at, see, it was doomed to fail.
Right.
And I still haven't done that. Right. But, when we look underneath that, it comes down to fears of vulnerability. Right. And we have the ego looks at, so there's two sides to it's vulnerability on the ego side and authenticity on the conscious side.
Right. And somewhere in there, you get your intuition skewed based on allowing the ego to influence it through expectations.
Right. And the ego perceives one side of that the side of vulnerability as being a weakness, when in consciousness, authenticity is a power, right? Is your power. Right. And so the key is it's not two different things. It's the same thing being skewed and seen in a different way, right? Because the ego is still afraid. The ego is still, well, what if it's not what I wanted it to be? What if it's, what if I imagined it in my head and it's not this? And then I'm going to be let down? Or what if I jump in 100%? And if it's in a relationship or something else, what if I jump in 100% and then they leave me on the playground?
Or what if it pushes me to a place where I really have to re-examine what I believe about myself?
Well, that's the next part. That's the next part. Exactly.
Because that's, what if all that I've believed and thought about myself and projected isn't so, or
Right.
isn't quite what I thought it was? Or then you get into the whole thing of, well, am I, feeling like a fool? We've talked about that before,
Right.
and how that creeps in, and feeling betrayed.
Well, and
mean,
that's all vulnerability, right? Because if
Right.
we leave ourselves open, right? But so when we look at it, that's when the ego's like, so the ego has the fears, right? The fears, the perception of betrayal and abandonment and denial and
Worthiness.
worthiness, all that, right? But when you get to that place of allowing yourself to just be exactly what you are, who you are in any given moment, 100%, it requires us, excuse me, obviously there's a lot here because the yawns have already started, but it
Right.
requires us to abandon expectations, right? Because expectations are the controls and the ideas that we put around what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like, what the parameters are, all that kind of stuff. And just show up, right?
Right.
And when we have no expectations, it's like, I am doing this because this is me authentically. And either you're here with me or not, or either they're here with me or not, or either it fits in my life or it doesn't. And then I'm going to have to reassess my life.
Right. Right. And, and what supports all of that is knowing that everything's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that you are creating this, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, and that in that creation, it's perfect to support wherever your creation is taking you. And when it comes from that place of authenticity, it's like the icing on the cake, because it's not only perfect, but it's consciously perfect, because you're coming from that consciousness of authenticity.
Right. And it sounds like, and as many of these, it sounds very simple.
Right.
Not quite so.
Right.
But my husband and I got into a whole talk yesterday and about some stuff, and I came up for me. Like it was so funny because I wasn't even thinking about what this topic was until later on when I went to go post, and I was like, look at that. That was so perfect. Right. And it was, and I couldn't even look at it for a while, even though we had already talked about it and it was already sitting there. Right. And it was, well, what are my expectations? And all I kept on saying was, I know it's my expectations. And he goes, well, what are the expectations? I said, I don't even know. Like, I just can't even put my fingers on them.
Right. Well, and that's when we, if you look at your intuition from that perspective, and if you can separate your intuition from the ego, it's completely different. But the ego wants to overlay that intuition with, oh, but remember last time. But, and
or
layer in
before, or 5 times before, or a year ago, or 5 years ago, or blah, blah, blah.
Right. And you layer in that experience, and then it's a question of, but did I glean from that experience what I intended, what I created it for, to then no longer have to pull forward the egoic perspective of it. And brings me back to that whole forgiveness thing.
Yeah.
Where you get to the place of gratitude for it.
Right. And the thing is, what happens when it cycles around, because to me, it's more like a spiral, right?
Right.
And it cycles back around. The biggest challenge is as soon as you feel the repetition of the energy of something that hurt you before, that you allowed to hurt you or whatever before, right?
Right.
Ego's perspective, the ego goes, oh no, it's like, bam, 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 you know?
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Exactly. It's like the flashing red light, in the control room, and the flailing robot. And it's and the thing is are we at the point where you can override that and say, gotcha, noted, and now we're going to see if this is different this time.
Right.
What if we react differently and maybe we'll have a different outcome?
Right. Exactly.
You know, and actually that's sort of something that's sort of what happened and ended up being a really great discussion, which then ended up being coming to a place of, and again, what we just said is we'll realize that you get to a different place within your life, and then you have to start reassessing everything.
Right.
Right.
Right. And that's when we've talked before about how wanting people to see us where we are right here, right now, and not back where we used to be. Well,
5 days ago.
well, yeah. And so in relying on that egoic version, it pulls us right back to where we were.
It does. And then it feels, the thing is, the more we are conscious of it, the ickier it feels when we allow ourselves to go there. Right. So that's why it felt really icky to me, even, and I was conscious of it, but I was like, nope, it's there though. I can't help, like, it's just there, you know?
Right.
This time I talked about it instead of stuffing it down.
Right. It felt like a sense of dread. Like, we have to do this again. I thought I'd done that.
Right. Right. No, right. Exactly. But yeah, no, so anyway, it ended up being a great conversation because at the end of it, it was, you know, we have changed, my husband and I have changed a lot of things in our dynamic and in our life, all in a really great way.
Mm-hmm.
And what we realize that there are many things that we still hang on to because of habit.
Right.
Right. So we've been feeling both pretty overwhelmed because it's like, how do you do it all? Right. I want to do all this. I want to really be engaged in all of this stuff, but then this stuff feels like it's like dragging along, and it's like, so then we just have to reassess our priorities and say, from a consciousness standpoint, what is truly important.
Yep.
And let go of what's not.
Well, and what are we living for?
Mm-hmm.
And rather than trying to drag it all forward, it's like, what are we really living for? And that's that priority thing.
But we're so afraid to do that.
Right.
And yet as because we get so attached, and that was what I was talking about yesterday. I was like, God, I didn't realize how attached I was to certain expectations, even though I couldn't even tell you what those expectations were, because it just was an excuse to say, well, look, see, it's not working, or this is like not right, or this is not whatever. This is just like then. Right.
This is like what I thought it would be. That it matches,
or what I was afraid of it to be. Right. Exactly.
Right.
So, you know, and sometimes, and a lot of times, we don't even allow ourselves to even get to that point. Right. We shut down before that even happens.
Right.
Yep. I mean, that's sort of like what you were looking at yourself last week. Right. And it's like,
yep.
And it's like, okay, because we have such protection, the ego, you know, people talk about, oh, well, the ego is there to protect us. No, the ego is there in terms of that, as we understand it, in terms of exploring separation identity, right? And within that, because there's the concept of a me and not me, it protects itself about what it believes is not me, right? Against.
So the ego is protecting itself.
Yes. So really not us as a whole, but itself. Right. And it's, you know, in its existence. Good morning, Gloria. I do see a comment, so that's good, because the whole screen looks different this morning. Anyway, so it's a challenge. And I know I remember, because I've had experiences like pushing myself into authenticity over the past, 10 years. But I know you and I have talked about it together as well. And it's like, the ego fears vulnerability, right? And the only reason there's the concept of vulnerability is because it believes it has something to protect, and it believes that it can lose something, right, by allowing certain things. But if we get, not if, when we get to a place of recognizing there's nothing to lose, like I am all present and all perfect right now.
Right.
And
And
all
when
my
we were,
choices are
right. And
perfect.
when we were talking about this, I kept thinking of the term extortion.
Mhm.
There is nothing to extort you. You can't force different behavior out of fear.
Right.
There's just nothing there.
And that is shameless plug. That is the full recognition of worthiness. Course 1, trust, course 2, guidance, course 3, forgiveness, course 4, self-responsibility, course 5, shadow, course 6, and self-love, course 7 of
Right.
the
Right.
adventure program. So
And essentially that is bulletproof.
it is. That is coming to being consciously vulnerable, which then changes the word vulnerable into authenticity, conscious authenticity. Right. And that is when you are Wonder Woman, Superman, like whatever you want to call it. It's because it's when you get to that place of I am so strong and what I am right this moment. And I recognize that it's perfect and that everything around me is perfect. And if I speak from my heart and self-responsibility of I feel this and this is what it's, this is what it says to me. And I look at my guidance and I'm coming from a place of worthiness and I trust that my expanded consciousness sees the whole picture and knows it's all, knows the perfect configuration of the hologram, and that I'm the one who creates this, so it's all perfect, and that the shadow puts a beauty to it in the depth of separation and contrast that we've created, which is perfect. And then, that whole self-love of look at what I've created. I mean, look at how beautiful that makes you in that authenticity, right?
I mean, it's incredible.
And then nobody can take it away from you. There's
Right.
nothing anybody can take away from you because you don't believe in any lack. There's no lack.
Right.
So see that we just solved all the world's issues and
Right there.
right there.
in just 20 minutes.
Right. And a 7-course program.
True. Right.
But this is how we're coming to the table with this. And it's funny because I didn't even see that until just now talking about it. Oh yeah, look at how that all just connects all together. But
right.
Really it's when we get to that place and it takes away the onus off of anybody else.
Right. It takes you out of victimhood. It takes you out of, victimhood. I mean, we spend so much time blaming the blame game and not taking that self-responsibility and feeling disempowered. And this it's empowerment from a whole different level. It's empowerment simply from existing.
Right.
I am, therefore I am.
Right. And from there, it's where we do everything from that consciousness. Right. And that includes if we choose to be subordinate or I don't want to say victim, but I want to say be like have something happen, right? Then we recognize that we've created that to help us remember something else, right?
Right. You just froze up. I can't tell if I'm still there or if you're the one that's gone. Oh. Hmm. I guess the live's still going on and it's just me. Oh, okay. So I'm still here, but Angela, I guess, is not. Oh, okay. Well, all right. So I guess we could keep going and maybe she'll join back in. I don't know if I need to leave so she can come back or not, because I just show me now. Yep. Okay. Well, okay. So continuing to talk about what we were talking about and that place of authenticity, I can't stress how much it has played out in my life and created such a different basis for my everyday living, and allowing that empowerment to not just be something that you put on, like a role you step into. It's just the basis for every conversation, every decision. And like she talked about in the course, that in all those courses, it's like each facet of that factors into everything that you do. And that's that full empowerment. And oh, Angela says that her power blinked out. So I don't know if that means it's back on or not. Let me quick text her. So when you look at it from that perspective of, it creates such a different, a different power structure. It's not a question of a hierarchy. It's a question of an expansion. And I think that that really makes a difference. Okay, she says she lost everything. She'll see if she can get back in a few minutes. Okay. Okay, so our internet has to reset. But if you look at that from that it's like a different power base. It changes everything. It changes your interactions with everyone and everything. And I know we were talking about this before we got on, and about how when that happens, then it's a question of a realignment and coming back into an equilibrium, or an alignment with everything and everywhere that you are and all that you do. And in doing so, it becomes a time to reassess all your priorities. And a lot of times you'll come to that place of, why am I still doing this? Why am I still doing X, Y, and Z, certain things? And that's when, in coming back into this authenticity, you get the opportunity. And I just realized I'm not back on Facebook. There we go. You get that opportunity to reassess all those priorities and say, yeah, I was committed to this, and now it's just not in alignment with that authenticity. And that allows that to just fall away. And getting back to what we originally talked about with expectations, is all the expectations that were associated with that, it's almost like everything just collapses in on itself. And you no longer have that as a distraction or as part of that intuition I talked about, with all the expectations attached to it. So I find that very, very powerful in it's almost like cleaning house, or at least cleaning out a closet, where it's like, oh, I didn't realize I still had this. And the energy that you were still left attached to that, and you're able to reclaim so much that you can then reprioritize to other things. And it gives you that sense of, oh, what's a good word for it? Clarity. Oh, it looks like she's reconnecting. There you are. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, I had
Okay.
to get on my phone because I don't have my internet, whatever. I just got on my phone.
Yep. but I see you.
Okay, good. So where were
Okay.
you?
Okay, so let's see. I was talking about how we right before we got on, we talked about how when you come more into that place of authenticity, that you realize that you've been carrying things around, and you have to realign and reset priorities,
Mhm.
and it allows you to free up some of your resources that you've been holding in other things that are just no longer a priority.
Right. Which makes it feel so much better.
Right, which, it gives you a different level of clarity with what it is you're creating, and clarity in your life. It's like, you go clean out a closet, and it's like, gosh, I didn't even realize I still had this.
Oh, right. Exactly. Well, that's
And
what came up for me. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Like, what is this about? Like, what am I getting all worked up about? And I couldn't even like put my finger on it because I was like, no, that's so outdated.
right. So if if we create our own little spiral around that, incorporating all these other aspects that we've talked about, it just makes it so freeing.
Yeah.
And so in that perfect alignment, that it creates that harmony
Yeah. Yeah. And
instead of the dissonance.
and such a breath of fresh air.
Right. Right.
It's funny because I tell people that all the time is like, if we take away all the energy we put to controlling things in our reality, right? And instead just let that all go and just focus on being and trusting and, being present, we would have energy for so many other things.
Right.
But we're like, oh no, I have to, think about that. I have to please my spouse and my kids. I have to do this. I have to look like this person. I have to do this kind of job. I have to have this kind of life. I have to present myself this way to public, in public. I have to present myself as this kind of a woman or this kind of a man or this kind. I mean, it's just think about all of those things that we have running in these
Mm-hmm.
scripts underneath the surface, right? And that's all part of this too, because when we start to say, you know what, screw them, this is who I am, this is how I am, right?
Right.
You just cleared up, say, like 50 scripts that you had running behind the scenes.
Right. Totally unaware of.
Yeah.
And it's not a question of, well, it's just, if you look at it from the perspective of, this is not who I am anymore. And I may have committed to this, and I may have proposed myself as this person or having this characteristic, but I'm not that anymore.
Right.
And then letting go of any judgments around disappointing people or letting people down or being fraudulent's the word that comes to mind, but that's not really quite it. Imposter.
Yes. Well, the imposter syndrome, totally.
Right. So it's almost like that. It's almost like waking up to a clean slate. And it's like, it's not that who I was is wrong or bad or less than. It's just, this is who I am today.
Right. It's just not now.
And that's incredible, because we've talked before about how every day starting the day with, this is the best that I am today, right now.
Yep.
And this really allows that.
Best version of me today, right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really allows that anything that was yesterday's best version was yesterday. And that doesn't mean that it has to be today.
Right. And it doesn't have to look the same. It doesn't have to, have the same energy. Yeah. Which we're not used to, because what we look for in people is consistency, right? Oh, right. I've known Sarah for 30 years and she's totally like this. And no, she would, and that's what we do. Like that's, right. And we take pride in that, knowing somebody like that in the way that they've been for whatever years, right? We
Right.
also take pride in people knowing us for that long and knowing us, right? Versus having the space, which is where relationships are going now, all kinds, friends, romantic, whatever, to a place of, yeah, I am who I am today, right? And then
Right.
we give each other the space and the fluidity and the freedom to not hold, that expectation of you got to be the same person all the time.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, that can bring a certain richness to a relationship as well.
Well, it brings a breath of fresh air,
Right.
right? Because that's where things get stale. Like when you say, and that's what people don't realize in any relationship, friendships, romantic, whatever, when we get to a place of saying, well, this is how you're supposed to be, this is how I'm supposed to be, right? And then there's that part of you, the authentic part of you that's going, but this is who I really am right now. Like, this is who I am. I'm not that anymore, but I'm stuffing myself back into that box to make that other person happy, to make myself feel like I'm worthy or whatever, because that person knows me, or like, there's so many different layers of that. So that we then, have what people call vanilla lives, right? Or we have, the life where it's like, ho hum, yeah, sort of bored, sort of boring, because you just stop exploring who you are right now.
Well, and that's a lot of cases where someone just up and walks out on their life.
Yep. Which is happening more and more.
It is. And that's where you get, that's so unlike them. Well,
Yeah.
actually, no, it's more like them than what they've been living.
Right. Because they're finally claiming who they are and leaving the rest behind, which is respectable. But yet culturally, we judge that as, crazy or having a crisis, or, well, yeah, you're having a crisis. Your expanded self finally said enough, and I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
I'm just going to walk out. And then
Exactly.
etherically, we have those who are walking out of their bodies. So,
Exactly. Yep.
we've talked about, but we'll talk about that on another day, because that's entirely different.
Right. Right. And Gloria adds that you feel lighter and gives you a sense of freedom, and it can also help you grow and change.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's so much more colorful. Like if you're constantly bringing a new part of you to the table in any relationship,
right,
it keeps it fresh, keeps it, rolling and changing and growing. And then we can truly have ourselves reflected back. If we are denying parts of ourselves, right, then we will judge when others reflect back to us the part of ourself that we're denying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And we'll get triggered by them. We will get, they will irritate us. But when we give ourselves the space to be our authentic self, it doesn't trigger us anymore. We just recognize, there I am, or, okay, I don't fit in this equation anymore, and it's time for me to move into something else. And there's no judgment about that.
Right. Or allowing that part of ourselves that they're reflecting to reconstitute back in, or be re-acknowledged, and imagine it's like a long lost friend, and looking at it that way versus the resistance and the triggering, and imagine the doors that can open there.
Right. Well, it adds to the hologram, right? Adds more dimension to the hologram, because you're allowing more facets of the self to actually be present.
Right.
And at the surface, right? And unapologetically, like, I love the idea, unapologetic authenticity. And we talk about it, and it's a process, because we're so, well, that's what we create. We created this whole set of density, this whole density, so that we could explore that lack and separation and limitation and everything else. And now in coming to completion of it is to come to the resolution of the whole thing as perfect. And yet now I can be free within the separation, right? Because I allow myself to be all of these facets, which is
Yeah.
quite beautiful.
It really is. I mean, you talk about, when you look at a gemstone, the reason it's faceted is to increase the beauty of the stone or the gem or whatever with the different refraction of the lights. And I mean, that's all we're doing
Yes.
for
Yep.
ourselves.
Yep. Dusting it off, clearing it up, taking it to the jeweler to get it all,
Right.
So it's nice and sparkly. So that's the thing I think this week is for us to really, really be conscious of. The first step is truly stepping out of what is it that I'm not? Like, what is it that I'm not that I'm pretending I am, right? Or what is it that I am that I'm pretending I'm not? Because those are the things that we really put a lot of energy to denying, right?
Right.
And that's and it doesn't just come to the surface right away, because the ego wants to deny, right?
Right.
So the place to look is where you're triggered by somebody, where somebody irritates you, where you feel like you are in a bad place on, or a challenging place on, or something that just is sitting heavy on you in your life. That's where it's hidden. Like, that's where we're hiding it.
Well, and like that phrase, methinks does protest too much.
Right.
Where are you protesting about something? Where are you allowing that, like, a level of protection over? You still there?
I am. My phone rang and then it
Oh,
apparently there's all kinds of resistance from me today.
right.
Like, good Lord, the electricity goes out, the internet wouldn't come back up, my phone starts ringing. It's like, whatever.
Yeah, well, my dogs have come and left the room like 5 times. Like, we can only take this a little bit at a time.
So yeah, so obviously we have I specifically have a lot there going on, but we all do, I think. Especially right now, we're holding ourselves to a whole different level of a foundation of reality. So as we hold ourselves at a new foundation of reality, all this other stuff falls away, and we have no choice vibrationally, because vibrationally it just doesn't resonate, right? So then you can just let it fall away and then free ourselves up. But it's really that death clutch that the ego has, because then the ego is trying to protect itself and saying, oh, but if I let go of this, I don't know who I am. That's not who I am. How am I? How am I? And all that kind of stuff. So it's important to look at the places that are the most raw within us.
Right.
Like whether it's judgment for other people, anger, fears, or just a place where you feel like you have this pit that's going on, or you're falling into a hole,
or a sense of loss of control.
Yeah. And that's what your expanded self is saying. Look, and let go.
Like, I'm going to smash your face into this. Open your eyes.
I know. And it's funny because there's somebody I was texting with last night who's been a client and a friend for a long time. And I was just like, so something just keeps on hitting them in the head, right? And I'm doing my best to not getting attached to it, right?
Right.
And of course, then I'm like, well, if I'm getting even a little bit triggered, then where is it for me, to look at, right?
Right. Yep.
And they finally said to me, so I guess I just needed to be smacked in the head yet one more time. I said, or really run over by a Mack truck. And they were like, apparently. And I was like, Well, okay, so it's good to have the consciousness about it, but how about we act differently about it next time, when it comes around again?
Right,
That's
right.
the
Yeah,
goal.
the consciousness is just the first step.
But it's a big one. It is a
It
big,
is. It is. It absolutely is.
it is. So, all right. So I guess our clearing will be being able to see that where we're not being authentic, where we believe that our authenticity is a vulnerability and a weakness,
Right. Yes. Yes.
and to be able to see it clearly, free of judgment, in a way, in a place of love and forgiveness and apology. Our apology forgiveness circle of this month, the
That's
course of
right.
this month and forgiveness. So doing that apology, forgiveness, acceptance, embracing love and gratitude for having those experiences and denial, and now allowing them to be complete so that we can come into that powerful authenticity versus the weak vulnerability, right? Which is
Right.
very different energy around the same thing. How's that feel?
Right.
Yeah. All right, good. Well, so then we're going to do that. Hopefully before, something else happens here. So on that, everybody close your eyes, take a deep breath, open your heart as we step out of separation back into wholeness and oneness. And we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That's from where we exist, experience, and create. All right. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of resistance there. It took me a while to get into that. I had all these noises going on around me too, and I was like, oh, phone rang again. Neighbor's kids, the neighbor's grandkids are playing basketball outside the window. Then I had some weird noise come through my speaker. I was like, okay, whatever. No, I'm okay with this. You know?
I'm finally seeing where I had such fatigue over the weekend. It's like, because doing this, I just feel like it's setting something down, shedding all that, isn't authentic anymore. And it's like, gosh, I'm tired from holding all that.
Mhm.
So,
Yes. Well, and it's funny because all of these there's so many elements, little pieces of of the inauthenticity, right? That we've protected.
right.
And then like, oh, well, look at that. And oh, that's freeing to just not care about that. It's freeing to just not care about that, to not. And then people call like, that's the funny thing is, and we get so afraid of what people are gonna, judge you as, but then, because then people go, oh, you're non-compassionate, you don't care, whatever. No, I'm self-supportive now,
Right.
and I choose what I choose. And yeah, funny. Yeah, I mean, it felt good though. But I definitely
Yeah,
have to go
really good.
and look at that because I did have a little bit of a epiphany out there. So more to do.
More to be.
More to be, exactly. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Sorry for the weird mishaps on my end, but Sarah was there, so that's great. And I think you're gonna have to disconnect since I got off. I think you're
Oh,
hosting.
okay. Yep, that works.
All right. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.